I'm dumb, she's an alien.
Romulus.
Anlien Romyloo! Anlien Romyloo is a story about Rey from Star Wars and her brother Finn from Star Wars trying to get off their junky space planet, teaming up with a band of young adult rascals to steal a spaceship. No, I guess that is their spaceship. Taking their spaceship that they own legally and going to space to steal stuff from Weyland-Yutani so that they can go to a lovely planet where robots aren't allowed. It leads to them having a less than stellar time on their little theft mission. So I'm going to start this video with a little spoiler-free section. So if you haven't seen the movie, like, feel free, you know, to hang around. But then I'm going to get into spoilers a little later on. So yeah. So weirdly enough, I wanted to start with the marketing of this movie. First of all, poster, sauce. Oh, there's no way. Just look at how sick this thing is. Look at it. It's simple. It's scary. It's red.
Everything's in red. Yeah, I know.
Same with the trailer. The trailers all looked really simple and just kind of like a straightforward alien movie, which I think was really refreshing coming off of the convoluted kind of mess that was the previous two, Prometheus and Covenant. So kind of harkening back to like traditional people go to a spaceship and die alien was weirdly refreshing, and I really appreciate that. And just rapid fire going through Fede Alvarez's previous stuff. Don't Breathe, I thought was a really cool and effective, simple, almost like monster movie, creating this monster out of this old man character stalking these like teenagers through a house. I think it makes perfect sense to transition him to this franchise because you could tell he brings a lot of that experience into this movie, and it's really applicable and really cool. And also, it's been a long time, but I remember really liking the Evil Dead remake, actually. There's a lot of similarities, I feel like, between both of his previous movies I'm talking about, Don't Breathe and Evil Dead. That's kind of applicable to this Alien movie. There are definitely times where that first Evil Dead movie crosses the line into kind of generic ghost schlock nonsense. I'm thinking like the intro, for example. But it also, you can tell there's a lot of respect for that, you know, the first chunk of movies. It's got a lot of callbacks that are done in like interesting different ways, and a lot of that is applicable to what's going on in this Alien movie too. There are definitely a lot of callbacks in this movie, some of which were welcome, some of which I thought were wholly unnecessary and definitely went too far. There's a particular line of dialogue that I think if you've seen the movie you know what I'm talking about. Stupid, just stupid. Makes no sense in the context of the scene. I think we're all expecting it, though. I was definitely expecting it and hated it as much as I expected to. That being said, I really enjoyed the movie overall. I thought it was really fun. You know, just enough kind of callbacks to Alien and Aliens, but also more than that. It kind of calls back to almost every single Alien thing. I was thinking a lot about the game Isolation throughout a lot of this. Which is great. You know, they even have those little circular kind of asshole-looking doors that I think are in the other movies, but I think of Isolation when I see those. I really, really liked all the characters in this. Granted, there were a few moments. There is a particular stretch in the movie where they're just kind of all rattling off, hey, this is my deal. Oh, that's cool. This is my deal. Oh, why is he this way? Oh, this is his deal. But, you know, it was done quickly enough and effectively enough to get to care about a lot of these characters. The relationship between the main girl, Rain, and her brother I thought was particularly really awesome. That dude, everyone's talking about this guy's performance, but it really is because he is the standout of this movie. And the main girl does a great job as well. Everybody does fine. Nobody really stands out in a negative way when it comes to performances, but he in particular has a lot of nuance in his performance and has a lot of depth that you know, he gets to kind of play multiple different characters in this movie, and he crushes every single one of them. So yeah, I thought all the characters were really kind of strong and served all the purposes that they needed to. It did remind me a bit of the sort of truckers in space kind of idea of that first Alien movie. And going into Aliens, the kind of casual, blue-collar type of like worker vibe that they all had. This is sort of a different take where it's a lot more sentimental. A lot of the characters are younger, like either teenagers or young adults, and you kind of feel that in their dynamics. Yeah, I would say in general it's a lot more sentimental than we're used to these Alien movies being, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I enjoy that, but it can definitely come across as maybe a little cheesy to some folks, but I enjoyed it. The beginning of the movie specifically lets us see a different side of this kind of alien universe that I really enjoyed seeing. And while you could argue it kind of is sort of generic Star Wars, Blade Runner, junky planet stuff, I think it really fits into the world. And I think aesthetically the whole movie really fits into the world of Alien really well. It's all stuff that we maybe have kind of seen before, but I am a sucker for like the 70s junky space aesthetic of those first movies of Star Wars, Blade Runner, so I'm not complaining. That being said, in the beginning of the movie there is a pretty terrible metaphor. It's like sort of like a writing trope where the main character looks at a thing really quickly, and it's very heavy-handed. It's only really quick, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that sucks. It's effective, but maybe this movie's not too worried about being subtle with what it's trying to say and do. Yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the dynamics between these characters. That being said, I have kind of a theory where I think they might have cut out a little bit of an implied relationship between the main character and another one of these guys on the ship. They're all kind of dumping their backstory all at once. And this guy doesn't really get a strong one, and it's sort of leading me to think that maybe his deal was his kind of implied romance with this main character. That could also just be me way reading into it, and maybe like I've read too many articles about how romance in Hollywood is dead and they cut the kiss scene out of Twisters, so maybe that's just like an after effect of my brain. But there are definitely some moments where sort of uncut-outable moments where they kept in like a hint of some sort of implied relationship that you could argue is like, oh, okay, when there's a man and a woman in a movie, it doesn't have to be a romantic thing. But there's just enough in there for it to not be fully resolved and to just kind of seem like something was missing almost. So yeah, my theory is that they cut out some kind of relationship with them. Another thing that's kind of hinted at by the marketing, and I sort of expected going into this movie, but they get so much mileage out of the like non-classic alien. Like the other stages of the aliens sort of developing get a lot more screen time than we're used to. And leads to some really interesting and unique set pieces, which I thought was really great. There's a section specifically where they have to be like really quiet. I mean, that's a lot of the movie, but there's a section where they're focused on particularly being really quiet and they have to get across a room. That was just a great idea for a set piece in one of these kinds of movies. And I'd say in general, they sort of address the Prometheus Covenant issue of characters being really stupid. And I'd say they go out of their way to make the characters seem really clever in how they solve a lot of their problems in this movie. Particularly, there's a scene where they use like the cryo freezing stuff in a way that I thought was really great to solve the problem that they were in. Yeah, so I thought that was a great way to address sort of the typical I'm taking my helmet off, I'm staring into this alien egg thing issue from Prometheus specifically, and also Covenant. And I also just want to say thank you so much for getting away from all the convoluted how the xenomorph was created nonsense of those two movies. If you're looking for just kind of a more toned down, simplified alien movie similar to Aliens, I'd say this is probably my favorite outside of those first two movies. I haven't seen the like other cut of Alien 3 in a long time. I've seen the theatrical pretty recently, which was bad. But this is probably my favorite since Aliens. Maybe wrestling with that other cut of Alien 3, not the theatrical one. But as far as like a fun summer movie, yeah, this effectively makes that. This is probably the most fun I've had in a movie all summer. Yeah, this director just knows how to ride your emotions through an exciting scene. You know, there are some jump scares in the movie, but it never came across as like dumb or mean-spirited. It always came across as like a fun, thrilling, kind of horror action thing. It looks like a lot of effort went into practical effects, which is like unheard of nowadays, but I think is awesome. But yeah, it seems like a lot of love went into this movie. It seems like the aliens were actually guys in suits or animatronics or guys in suits with animatronic elements, which I think is really cool. A lot of the face huggers, if you look at the behind the scenes, are like tangible little robots that are controlled on set, which I think is so awesome and really adds a lot to the like tangibility of the thing being in the presence of the scene instead of actors having to act on like CG, against like CG stuff. It seems like the director was excited to take this on, and I think he was an awesome choice. If anything, this is almost his audition for a Star Wars type of movie because of how much it expands the world of this franchise, and because specifically of those first 30 minutes, really giving across that kind of grungy 70s space aesthetic. I'd say Fede Alvarez is shooting his shot for the Star Wars. So all that being said, when a certain effect comes on screen and is the total opposite of all of that, and is more representative of what Disney's doing in a lot of their other movies right now, it's really disappointing and really distracting and really at odds with the rest of this movie aesthetically, and just kind of sucks, honestly. It's a little bit of MODOK face. It's every time that this certain character is on screen, it immediately takes you out of it and sucks. So I really wish they just didn't do that. I wish they kind of went with another character or, did the animatronic route of the first movies. But, yeah, it's a studio note, I'm sure, and at the end of the day, Fede gotta do what Fede gotta do. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for the non-spoiler section. I think if you enjoy the first two movies, you kind of get the sense of what you're getting into with the trailers. You'll enjoy it. If the previous two movies sort of turned you off from the franchise a bit, I do think this is a little bit of a return to form, in some ways that are good and some ways that are a little bit of a retread. But overall, I enjoyed it. So getting into spoilers, this movie does some bold shit in the last 15 minutes. Everybody's talking about it. CGI MODOK face I was talking about is obviously based on the character Ash from the first movie. Disney has some obsession with doing this de-aged thing, I think just to flex the technology because it looks bad, and they must know it looks bad. And I'm sure they had an animatronic of that guy, or they had that as a different character originally, because it doesn't even look like the face like fits the head shape. I really just wish they went either with a different character or a different route entirely, because that was really distracting. Another thing that I guess is a spoiler because it doesn't happen, but this being the first kind of Disney alien movie, or the first alien movie under Disney, I was fully expecting fucking de-aged CGI Sigourney Weaver to come out of the cryopod and kick ass and help our heroes and have it be a passing of the torch or some shit. So I am so happy that did not happen, because good God. I appreciate the restraints. This is not a movie filled with much restraint, but I appreciate the restraint, at least in that regard. So thanks. I had a visceral reaction when the black goo made a return in this movie. And when that guy, Rook, I think, said the word Prometheus, I groaned. I wanted to drive my thumbs through my eyes. But it's okay. They didn't do too much of that. I thought this was going to be so much more convoluted. I thought it was going to tie into, but actually this is how the space jockey was made, and here's the origin of, and it kind of does that. You could argue it kind of looks like those Prometheus, Blue Man Group, Squidward, handsome Squidward looking guys at the end. I thought that's what they were doing. But yeah, okay, so the last 15 minutes, this thing that shows up at the end, you're expecting, some kind of protomorph maybe, or some kind of variation of a xenomorph. But what comes out is actually the scariest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Holy fish paste! It's a guy!
I'm such a sucker for like strangely lanky proportioned things. It kind of reminded me of there's a guy in It Follows, if you've seen that movie. Like one of the guys that the creature like possesses, or one of the forms that the creature in that movie takes, is just this really freakishly tall guy. Kind of reminded me of that. It kind of reminded me of a part of Resident Evil 7, I want to say, Biohazard, where you're fighting a lady with like fucked up proportions. She's like crawling all over the walls. frightening. And I thought it was cool, you know? I mean, yeah, it's a variation of what they did in Resurrection, but much more effective. You're not supposed to feel, like, sympathetic for it, which is good. So I really like that thing. They had some really cool shots of it, like, in the haze, in the smoke. She's running from this thing, and you see, like, the shadow flickering. I thought it was really effective. That was super cool. You see it at first, and it does kind of look like the Prometheus dudes. I also had a visceral reaction where I wanted to hop out a window. But what they end up doing with it is a lot more creative and a lot more different than I was expecting. And it also kind of tied into the whole, like, sexual nature of these movies and the creature designs. It almost reminded me of, like, having to have your, like, rapist's baby. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really cool and a really fun, like, expanding of that sort of idea. Obviously, the thing that stands out to me as terrible, other than MODOK's CGI face, get away from her, you bitch. We all knew it was coming. I knew it was coming, but I hated it. You know, we all hated it. If you're in that theater and you're like, yeah, then good for you, but, like, it makes no sense. You know, makes sense in Aliens because it's a queen. It's Ripley saying it to a queen, like a female alien. You know, it's a female. It's giving birth. This is just a random alien. It's like he's saying it to, like, a bug. There were slight, like, Force Awakens almost vibes in this movie, and that's all the stuff I really didn't like. Like, toward the end when she's running around, you know, one girl left, she's got the gun, she's got the Reeboks, and she's running down the hallway while this thing is stalking her. It honestly feels a little bit like a theme park ride or something, both in a good way and in a bad way. It was a little, you know, just like, yeah, we've seen this. We've seen this not only in Alien and Aliens and Alien 3, but we've also seen it, like, as recently as the previous movie with Covenant, where they did the same thing. It was a girl with shorter hair, like, running around with a gun. And I don't know, just, like, not every Alien movie needs that. So I didn't love that aspect of it. There were a few, I think it was, like, 2 or 3 shots in particular where I'm like, this is ripped from Alien. And there were some cool homages. They did the like, head to planet transition from the original Alien toward the end that I thought was cool. But then there are some that it feels less like an homage and more like derivative, which is weird to say because I feel like this movie does a lot to bring new ideas to the table as well. Or, like, reinvigorate older ideas and kind of see new perspectives on those older ideas that we didn't originally get. So, weird to see it kind of going backwards or just harkening back to the original a little too much. Again, I'm sure that was all studio note stuff. So, Fede, I'm sorry. Do what you gotta do. Yeah, and there's also just kind of, I mean, that whole elevator sequence I thought was kind of unneeded and pretty dumb. You know, like, the alien grabs her just to yell at her face, and I know why. I know that's just to get the image from Alien 3 because it's an iconic thing, so you can put that in trailers and on the poster, but there's no reason why that thing wouldn't have impaled her or just let her drop or you know, eat her face or whatever. So yeah, you know, them's the breaks, them's my thoughts. I think overall I really enjoyed it. There are definitely some things that they played a little safe to the point where it was detracting from the movie. Not even safe, but more like just kind of doing things we've already seen before. When it feels like a soft reboot of Alien or Aliens, that's all the stuff I didn't really like. When we're getting to know more about Weyland-Yutani and getting this other perspective from the kids of these workers, I thought all that was great. I thought the new creature design was sick. And yeah, I mean, overall, really fun, exciting time and super effective, like, horror thriller movie in space. Get out of here, you.